I'm going to press record right now. It is 9 o'clock on the dot. Gentlemen, no, thank you, Scott, because you're right. You know, on the West Coast here for the SnapAV locals at Evolutone, Jim, I don't know, do you know Dennis and Timo? Trainers that we've worked with a number of times over the last few years, you know, and really kind of introducing the commercial, you know, conversation again. They've been great as far as the West Coast, but it's just really good to have you on board. You know, I do want all the dealers on here to know about the support from Yamaha nationwide, because this is kind of why we started introducing our weekly webinar series to our SnapAV locals, the local stores. It's a national entity. We're all one, right? But we get to have a little bit more of a unique discussion every single week. You know, there's choices out there in our stores, on our shelves. There's so many solutions, and with Yamaha being a partner of ours for quite some time now, the robust, the profitability. There's a lot of great things. So. I like to direct these conversations into the mentality of what these guys are walking into in our SnapAV Pro stores. I want you to all know that my teammates at the counters are well versed in this. I'm really looking forward to the curriculum today, and of course having Scott Normand on board as well. All right, guys, I'm Gary from Volutone and from the SnapAV locals. I host this each and every week, so thank you for jumping on this. You know, we do a commercial focused training at least once a month. That's another thing Scott and I have been kind of planning and implementing into our future dates as well. So continue to look for commercialized discussions and seeing where we're going and getting guys on the hot seat like today. So it's exciting. I'm recording this. I will put together a very competent follow-up. Jim, you could give me your deck when we're done. I'm going to kind of compile everything. Everybody gets an email from me on Friday morning that you can pass to your team, review this video. The deck, as I said, different links as well, and Scott will give me some ingredients to put into that as well. So I just want you to know that we're going to continue the conversation, especially when we bring up jobs today and specifics. I'll record the questions, everything, so you're covered. You don't have to take screenshots or anything like that. That's exactly why we bring this up and why we've timed this to have this discussion and continue to allow you guys to integrate with our sales engineers and continue the conversation and get your questions answered and continue to build upon our Yamaha knowledge. All right, Jim, yeah, it's the first time I've worked with you. I'm going to turn it over to you, Scott. I think you're going to come in afterwards. But you know what? Hey, Scott, maybe you could take it away first and kind of give us a little preview of what we're expecting today. Good friend of mine, Scott Normand, take it away, buddy.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, so we've got Yamaha on the call today. We're super excited about this. And what, as I mentioned earlier, we partnered with Yamaha on the commercial pro grade product lines about this time last year, right when COVID set in. And the approach we took is to not only have it in our local facilities, but on the SnapAV.com e-commerce website as well. And I was just looking on the website. We actually have 150 SKUs from Yamaha, all commercially related. It's their commercial integrator line. And it really breaks down into kind of 4 subcategories. There are the power amplifiers. Some of those are Dante enabled. There's a full speaker lineup, and the speaker lineup is just incredible. I mean, everything from 1.5 inch all the way up to 8-inch, 10-inch speakers in like 1-inch increments. I mean, if you're looking for a 3.5-inch speaker, a 2.5-inch speaker, it's really incredible what you can get through the Yamaha line. And they do a fantastic job of providing a speaker that meets every architectural need. So there's no excuse anymore when the architect says, hey, I'm really worried about the audio and how it's going to look in the application. They really have everything that you could possibly need for every job. So if episode's not meeting your need or other speaker lines aren't, Yamaha is definitely the place to look. So amplifiers, a full line of speakers. They have the control components, keypads, wall plates that allow you to do the control. We even have their Dante enabled network switches on our website. And then last but not least, obviously the mixers and DSPs. So not only the analog tabletop mixers that allow you to do like a small hospitality type of installation, but then all the full mixers and DSPs, the open architecture and the fixed architecture stuff. And that's really the focus of the call today. My ask of Yamaha was, hey, everybody knows how to install a speaker. Everybody knows how to buy a speaker. We generally know how to, do all the other stuff, but the DSPs are really the kind of the challenge that we have. Like, so the goal is to be able to get a DSP, put it on the bench, get connected to it, get it set up, and really understand, matrix routing and DSP routing. And that's really what Jim is here for today. And I'm super excited to have him here to kind of walk through the DSP lineup show us the jack packs front and back of them, and then get into the UI and show you guys how to set one of these up from start to finish. Ideally, it's a tall order, as we were talking about earlier, but I know that they can handle it, and looking forward to seeing it done. So take it away.
All right. Well, let me see if I can get my my screen shared properly here, and hopefully you can see that.
Looking good, Jim.
Okay. So let's like Scott said, it's a tall order to get through. So we're going to whip through just the front panels and the back panels of the CIS lineup of our DSPs. We'll start out with the MRX 7D, which is our open architecture box. If you don't know what that means, we'll get into that a little bit later. It's non-Dante native, 12 analog inputs, 8 analog outputs, 64 by 64 Dante, and 16 by 16 YDIF. YDIF is our proprietary audio channels. 16 audio channels on a single Cat5 cable makes wiring up things super easy. The MTX5D, mechanically on the outside is exactly the same. It just has a fixed architecture on the input or inside of it. It's much more of like a mixer in a box sort of thing, but has the same connector complements. If you don't need Dante, you have a smaller system, you can do the MTX3. It still has 12 analog inputs, 16 by 16 YDIF outputs, and 8 analog outputs, and is also a fixed architecture. Super cool little box for restaurants and retail and that kind of thing. Our amp lineup, basically we have 2 power levels, and we have 2 different channel counts, and we have 2 different analog or digital input choices. So we have 8 different amplifiers, all to fit your need. I'm not going to go into amplifiers a whole lot because amplifiers are amplifiers, and these are really good sounding ones. So let's just go through quick on the front panel, because that'll give you an idea of some of the capabilities and what you need to do to set these things up. First of all, there's an SD memory card. You can load a memory card up with a bunch of MP3 files, and this can be your background music source if you want. Or you can run sound effects with your with the paging mic that you can put into the system. It's super cool. If you have a card in the slot, there's a little light that indicates it on there, and it flashes when it's being accessed. Input signal indicators and peak lights, so you know if you're sending things too hot into the system. Output signal indicators tells you whether or not you're sending level out of the analog outputs. The preset display is a super cool thing. It shows the preset number you're on. You can recall a whole bunch of presets, set your box up the way you want it for different times of the day, that sort of thing. Recall the preset. You can do it on a scheduler. It also will show an alert or a message if there's a problem with your box. When the little alert light goes on, the number will change to tell you what the alert number is, and you can look that up in the manual and tell you exactly what's wrong. So if one of your control panels drops offline or something like that, it'll flash a little number at you, let you know exactly what's going on. You can change the presets internally with the up, down, and enter button. And if there is an alert showing, pressing the enter button will send it back to the preset number display. So a little bit of navigation for your numbers. The primary and secondary indicators on the front, these are like the link lights of a network interface. And the Dante boxes have a primary and secondary port. The MTX3 just has a single network port. So you don't have to go around the back of the box to see if your network is actually plugged in to your box. The sync indicators, if you know a little bit about Dante, this will tell you the operational status of your Dante network. You can change the settings of your clock master and things like that in here, and these lights will show you what that all looks like. And the best bet is, again, open the manual, and that'll tell you exactly what the combination of those lights means. Hopefully you'll understand what a power switch and a power light is. WIDIF is if you have something connected to your WIDIF output of the box, this will tell you you have something connected and if it's connected correctly. Like I said earlier, there's a scheduler in here. You can set to recall presets and things on a schedule. So you can turn things on in the morning. You can change the level at lunchtime. You can do whatever you want. You can set it lots and lots of different things and recall presets. If there's something in the schedule, this light will light and it'll start flashing 1 minute before it actually recalls something. Air intake fan for cooling. It does need occasional cleaning. I have to just vacuum mine out every now and then. On the back panel, AC in connector, no wall warts for our stuff. There's a ground screw that you can use for grounding external equipment. Be very careful using this. Make sure that you're doing your grounding scheme in accordance with codes. Improper grounding can lead to more susceptibility to lightning or power spikes and stuff like that, or even the safety of the people who come in contact with it. So we have a ground screw, but use it properly. Cooling fan vent on the MRX and the MTX5. It's on the back. On the MTX3, it's on the side. Don't block these. They will get hot if you do. It's a little computer in there, and hot computers are not a good thing. GPI connector inputs. So these are general purpose inputs that you can connect to switches or pots to control levels and recall presets, and just about anything you can do with a switch or a pot. You can do these. They're 5 volt, and there are connectors that you can use. Input number 16 is an oddball. You can actually send up to 24 volts into it, and that's generally used if you have to connect to a fire alarm system. And most fire alarm systems run off a 24 volt if you need to do a recall if the fire alarm system goes off. There are general purpose output connections, and these are open collector outputs that you can light lights, trigger relays, things like that. Details of how to hook that up is also in the manual. And there's some general 5 volt and ground connections that you can use in conjunction with the GPIO connections. All of our boxes have an RS-232 connector that you can control with an external connection or external controller like an AMX or a Crestron. These are real important for setting up your system. Each Yamaha unit needs to have its own separate ID number in order for the software to see it properly, in order for them to talk together. And the 2 dip switches and the rotary are how you set those IDs. Dip switches 1 and 2 specify the upper digit. The rotary switch specifies the lower digit. You cannot set your ID to 00. It won't work, but you can go from 0, 1 to 3F. If you know, that gives you 63 possibilities if you know your hexadecimal. The other dip switches also important for setup. Switch 3 doesn't do anything at this point, so leave it up. Switch 4 determines the behavior of the Dante secondary port. So you can see there's a primary and a secondary port. If it's up, it's in daisy chain mode. So basically it's a switch between the Dante and secondary port. So you could plug in another Ethernet device into that and you could use it. If it's down, it's in daisy chain, or it's in redundant mode, which is a specific mode to Dante where you can have a redundant network for your audio. So if your primary network goes down, the audio flows automatically through the secondary. I'm going to take this point and say, if you don't know much about Dante, go to Audinate's website and take The Dante certification courses levels 1 and 2 at least. If you're feeling real adventurous, take 3. 3 is hard, a lot harder, but 1 and 2 give you a super great overview of basic networking and basically how Dante works together. But it gives you, it's probably the best class for basic networking out there. So that's audinate.com, Dante certification 1 and 2. So switch number 5 is the panel lock. You can lock the front panel so people can't mash buttons and change things. If it's up, it is unlocked. And if you switch it down, it's locked. You can still page through error numbers and things like that, but you can't acknowledge them. You can't change presets or anything like that. Number 6 is the IP setting of the box. And this is super important in setting things up. If the switch is up, it's in unit ID mode, and your IP address is going to be 192.168.0 and the ID number. Okay, so whatever your ID number is set to. If the switch is down, the IP address is set by the settings in editor. So basically, when this comes out of the box, your best bet is plug directly into your primary port. Set your IP address of your computer to 192.168.0.253, and then you'll be able to see this box in MTX editor, and you'll be able to do the rest of your IP settings in the box. So that's a real important switch to know what it does. The other real important ones, 7 and 8, this is how you set your box back to factory defaults. If you screw something up, if you just want to start over, you would set these switches to 7 down and 8 up and power up the box. And it takes about 3 or 4 minutes for the box to initialize back to factory setup. And then you power it down, switch both of these switches back to both up, and power it back up, and it'll be just like it came out of the factory. On the back is the DCP port. We have the little DCP panels, which are little control panels. There's 3 of them with a variety of knobs and buttons on them. And this is the port you connect those to. It uses just a regular Cat5e or better cable. You can daisy chain up to 8 controls on each box. If you don't want to daisy chain them, you can buy a DC8H, which is a little splitter that will split the 1 DCP port into 8 DCP ports, and you can connect your panels up in a star configuration. These are your WiDiF connectors. Again, that's the 16-channel proprietary audio signal that we use to go to our amplifiers. And we have some input-output boxes that we can use for those as well. This is our network ports, our primary and secondary for Dante. The primary is also your control port if you want to control from Extron or AMX from an external controller. You would do this, and this is also where MTX MRX editor connects in through the primary as well. Input connectors, unbalanced input connectors, the RCAs, super easy for connecting CD players or other prosumer devices. The catch with these is they do not have an internal head amp gain. The level you send them is the level you get on the interior. For most prosumer devices, that's fine. If you have a device that has a low input, you might want to use the different inputs, like the balanced inputs. These are mic line inputs. They can be used for either. There's a head amp in there that you can specify the gain of them to get the gain up to where it needs to go. It also will provide 48-volt phantom for condenser microphones if you're running a microphone into there. All of that is set in the MRX MTX editor. Balanced output connectors, if you're running analog line level output to amplifiers or other devices, we've got 8 of those on here. So let's take a quick look at the software. Let me pull up the software. When you first open your file, there's going to be a dialog box that asks you if you want to open an existing file or if you want to start a new file. You can do that. What I've done is I've opened an existing file as a demonstration for you. And few things you need to know about this. This is our main file page. For setup, everything you need to know for setup is up here in the system menu here. And we'll just go through real quick. Network setup, this is for on your computer. Okay, you choose which network interface card you're using. Okay, I'm using this one. It also tells you if you're connecting directly to a box that's set in address mode. This is what you would set your computer IP address to. And to do that, it's got a super handy little button where you can get into your IP address of your computer and set your IP address if you need to. Okay, so that's the network setup. Device information. This is all of the Yamaha devices that are currently sitting on the network that your computer can see. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this because there's more than just that. Okay, so this is all of the actual devices that are sitting on my network that my computer can see. Okay, and this is my computer IP address that's sitting here on my network. And this gives me the information of all of these different items. And this button here is where you can set the IP address of a device. So if I go to my MRX7 and I go in there and my dip switch is set to unit ID mode, this is the IP address of that box. If this dip switch is set to PC mode, I have these two choices. I can either go DHCP, and if you don't know what a DHCP server is, it's a network device that hands out IP addresses to the devices on the network. If you don't know what a DHCP server is or how that works, that's one of those network things that you really need to learn if you're going to be doing anything audio these days, because everything is network, and that's IP addressing is like the foundation of what you need to know to control almost anything AV related these days. So I can either go DHCP mode, which I am doing right now, or I can use a fixed IP address. And I would click on that and I would put the IP address that I want in there. Okay, I'm going to keep it at DHCP mode. So down here, if you're using your scheduler and this system is sitting on a network that actually has internet access, you probably want to put your default gateway and your DNS server in there, and then you can have the internal clock of the box update regularly to an internet time server. So super cool. So doesn't matter if it turns off, turns on, it always has accurate time. So that's a real cool function if you're using the scheduler. So you can just go through all of your devices and set the device for all of those on that particular thing. Updating firmware is also here. We recommend keeping up to date on your firmware. Right now, all of my devices are at 4.0, which is the most recent. If I were to update it, I would just select one and it would update it to whatever is up in this list. I would hit update. It takes between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on which box it is, to actually update the firmware. So that's firmware updates. Next thing on the line, I'm going to show you this only because you never want to check this box. I shouldn't say never. This is a very specific use case scenario if you have a complicated network, if you check this box. If you check this box, it's going to cause you problems. You're going to see devices and not see devices, and it's going to seem super random to you. But it's because it's doing some advanced network things that if you don't have an advanced network, it's going to mess up. Speech privacy. This is a whole different seminar. Speech privacy is available. Files are available in their MRX7D. I'll just put a real quick plug in. Our speech privacy is way, way different than most masking systems. It's not just a bunch of noise. It actually enhances the environment that you're in while it's contributing to privacy. So I have mine installed in there, so you can see that it's already in my MRX7. MTX configuration, if you're using an MTX5 like I have open right here, this tells you how your input channels are set up. You can set them up in mono pair or in stereo pairs or mono inputs. You can choose whether your matrices, your zones are stereo or mono. You can choose whether your outputs are two-way with a crossover or if it's two one-ways. A whole lot of things that you can set up. Advanced settings has how you pan things in your matrices. So you can do some really amazing things with MTX boxes that is not readily apparent by changing its configuration. So that's up here. Dante information gives you the Dante information of your box if you're using that. Again, Dante level 1 and 2 certification, take it. It's really cool. It's really worthwhile. We won't go through clock and daylight savings time. This is where you would set your clock and set it to get the time from the internet. Here's the scheduler where you can recall things, and you can recall them on a weekly basis, a daily basis, an hourly basis, any way you want. You can set it up to recall things. Restaurants use this a lot for changing the volume level at lunchtime, dinner time, that kind of thing. If you're using your GPIs, you're going to want to go through the GPI setup and your GPI calibration. If you're doing remote controls, the list of things that you're controlling is all there. So that's all up in the system menu. So anything setup related is going to be up in the system menu. So let's look real quick at an MRX7D. And if those of you who know what an open architecture device is, this is going to look super familiar to you. So this is MRX7. This is the designer page. And you have all of the things that you can choose from over here. You have compressors and mixers and EQs and inputs and outputs and paging blocks and all kinds of things that you can choose. And you can just pull them over and drag them into your design, and you can wire them up just the way you need them. And it's really that simple. The system can be as complicated or as simple as you need it to be in the MRX7. I have a system where I'm running an entire hotel off of one MRX7, and it has 5 conference rooms, it has 3 lobbies, it has 2 performance spaces, and I have one MRX7 that's doing the processing for all of that stuff. So the MRX7, super, super powerful DSP box. So that's the open architecture. The MTX5s and the MTX3s are fixed architecture, and these are basically mixers in a box. If you're familiar with a regular live sound mixers, these are laid out very similar to the way they are. If you want to look at a channel, you select it, and this row of buttons gives you all of your options. So your gain, your high pass filter, your EQ is all there. Gates and compressors on each channel. Feedback suppressors, automatic gain controls. There's even an 8-channel Dugan auto mixer. If you're ever doing any auto mixing and you haven't used a Dugan, you're in for a treat because it's an auto mixer that actually works. Matrixing, you can send different channels to different zones. So if I want channel 1 to go to zone number 1, because that's like a microphone, and I want stereo mic to go to stereo line level to go to zone 1. That's how I do that. The zones have processing like paging and ducking and that kind of thing. It also has automatic level control that you can use in the different zones. So really nice for background music and that kind of thing. It has another router where you can route the zones and the processing that you're doing to different outputs. So if you have, say, a restaurant and your main dining room has ceiling speakers in one section and surface mount speakers in another section, and you would put them on different outputs, so then you can process them differently on the outputs. And the outputs have their own EQ. They have a speaker processor with libraries for all of the Yamaha equipment in there. Super neat. If you're doing karaoke, you can do it has a couple effects engines in there. You can put some delay and reverb on things. There's DCAs available, different ways of controlling level. It's just super powerful, the MTX5, even though it's a fixed architecture box. Okay, so the MTX3, we'll look at an MTX3 real quick. The MTX3 looks essentially like an MTX5, it just has less channels. Okay, it only has 8 zones instead of 16. It has less outputs. It has 8 instead of 16. Other than that, function-wise, it has all of the same stuff that the MTX5 has. Okay, so that's basically a real quick rundown of the hardware. In a specific project, I can actually have up to 4 different systems in a project. Okay, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to my MRX70. I'm going to show you real quick how easy it is to go online. So this column here is filled with devices that are on the network but not in the design. So all of my devices that I have in my system, which we saw up here, all of these are actually already assigned and they show up over here. Okay, if I have a green light by it, that means that the computer can see it. The software can actually see the device. If there's no light on there, then you can't see these, you're not going to be able to go online with that device because it's not there. Chances are it'll show up over here and it might be an addressing problem. So my MRX7D is address number 3. My amplifier is address number 30. If I were to change this in the software to something else, this would go back over here and say, hey, it's over here. You can fix a mismatch, either changing it in the software to match the amplifier or change the amplifier to match the software. Either way. Going online is as simple as saying, go online. I want to send what's on my computer to the device. Hit OK. I'm just going to go online with my MTX5. Now we'll go online with the MRX7 because that one's up, and just say online. And it'll send the program. And once it's done sending, it'll synchronize your computer to the device. When it's all done, it'll processing, always processing. Okay, now we got a blue light on each of my 2 devices here. That means that the software is talking to the box. That means any changes I make in the software immediately go to the box, or any change I make to the box will immediately come back to and I can see it on the software. This guy is in red because there was an error. And what the error is on this one is that I had set my MRX7 to get the time off of the internet, but I didn't set up my DNS server. Okay, so if you remember, if I went over here and went to the clock, and I have it set to synchronize to an internet time server, But if I go into the device information, I look at my MRX7 and, oh, I'm online, I can't do that. If I looked in the MRX7 in the network setup, it would say there's no DNS information in there, and you can't look at the internet without DNS information. Okay, so going offline is as simple as going online. Just check the one that you want to go offline. And now we're back to green and we're not connected with the box anymore. So that is a super, super, super quick look at the software. There's a lot going on in the software. It literally takes days in order to do that. But let's do this. Let's do some best practices to kind of get going on how to use the Yamaha equipment and kind of how to do digital AV in general, because everything's a computer these days, and there are certain things that you can do that are super helpful. First thing you really need to do is you need to learn basic networking. Okay, you need to know what an IP address is, and you know how to set it, and you need to know how to choose what IP address you want to have on your computer and on your devices. Okay, have a network plan. Okay, have a piece of paper that says, here are all my network devices. Here's what I want their IP addresses to be set to. And that way, when it comes time to actually plug in the software, you have a plan, it goes super quick. Okay, have a system plan. And for a lot of people, this is just super basic things, but have a system, draw up flow drawings, one lines that tell, you know, make and model of everything and the model numbers of your connected equipment. If you're ever calling Yamaha tech support, if you send them your one line and you send them your program for your Yamaha devices, tech support is going to be so much easier for you if you have a problem. So learn basic networking, have a plan. Okay. When you're programming in the software in MTX editor and MRX editor, label everything. There are lots of places in the software all over the place for labeling inputs and outputs and signal types and labeling groups and labeling presets. Use them. It makes life a whole lot easier when you go down the line and you're programming your, say you're programming your DCP and you have to recall a preset. If your preset is labeled number 55, that doesn't tell you much. If you labeled your preset recall lunch level, when you're programming your DCP, it's a whole lot easier. And so label everything, really label everything. Here's one that this is sort of a bit, not necessarily a Yamaha thing, but a business thing for you. Develop your program and set up before you get on the job site. Okay, open up your boxes, set them up, plug them into your switch, set your IP addresses, get connected with the software, load your initial program, and test your basic signal flow. Okay, nothing looks worse than when you get to your job site and you're poking around your computer for 2 hours trying to get online with your box, and your customer's sitting there going, "What in the world is he doing?" And unfortunately, it's a fact of life when it comes to AV these days, is that there's a lot of time staring at the computer, changing numbers. And if you can avoid doing that in front of the customer, you look like a hero. Here's a good one. If you believe in Murphy's Law, record all of your serial numbers before you put them in the rack, because Murphy's Law says if you record all your serial numbers, you will never need them. Okay. But if something does go wrong, if something happens, you have your serial number when you can call tech support, makes RMA processes and that kind of thing so much easier. So just record them right out of the get-go. What I'll do is I'll just write them right on my one-line drawings and put them there so I have them. Here's one that this one has been earned for over years of grief of programming both control systems and DSPs. When you're naming your program that you're using, it should have three things in that program name. It should have your job name or job number or something that identifies where that program belongs. And I actually like the job name more than job numbers, because then I don't necessarily have to look up where that's located. Okay, you should have a revision of the program. As you're building your program and you're making major changes, save a new revision. I just use the date for that. And the third thing you should have is the version of the designer. So MTX MRX Designer we release updates to it every now and then. And if you do a lot of things, you're going to find that you have a lot of different systems and they're going to be all on different versions. And you need to open it up in the version that it was made if you don't want to update your firmware every time. So if I have a version that was done in 3.7, a system and I'm going back out for a service call, I need to open that up in 3.7 in order to easily connect and do my thing. If I want to update, I can do that. I just have to update the firmware and everything. And that's not always necessary to do, especially if you're on a service call. So for example, this is how I name my files all the time. So I have my job name. So this is the O2 bar. I have the date, and I do it in backwards order because Windows still sorts things weird. Okay. If you do this, it'll always be sorted correctly according to the date. And then I have the version of the MTX editor, which right now the current version is 4.0.1. Okay. So that's how I name that's my naming convention. And it has saved me many, many times over the years. Lastly, all audio is computers these days. Okay. So every computer needs a good surge suppressor. Okay. We don't sell surge suppressors. There's a few that I recommend. At the very minimum, get a good series mode surge suppressor, not just a cheap MOV power strip. Okay. They, with audio, can do more harm than good sometimes. So the one I like is a SurgeX. I love SurgeX stuff. They invented the series mode surge suppressors. They're really good at it. Furman also has some series mode. They have some other ones as well. Make sure that it says series mode in the specs. Okay. Better would be a UPS with a series mode suppressor in it. SurgeX makes these. And the very best is to go with an online UPS. And an online UPS basically it converts the AC to DC, has a battery in there, keeps the batteries charged, and then it has an inverter that creates the AC coming out. So it's always on, and that conversion process blocks any of the crap that is coming in on your power line. So that's kind of my list of best practices. There's probably 300 more in my brain, but those are the ones that are going to probably save your butt when you're setting up systems. So I would love to have you contact me if you have questions about anything that I've said today. Even if you have criticisms or critiques, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. It's jjohnson@yamaha.com. Want you to know that we also have advanced design help for you guys. For, if you have a system that is bigger than what you think you can design, work through your district manager, your Yamaha district manager, and they will get you in touch with the design team, which I'm a member of. There's 4 of us who do system designs for you guys. So if you need help, please give us a call. We give you, good design, and we give you equipment lists and things like that. if you have a general audio geekery thing that you want to let me know, I think that's I love getting emails like that. My email is not a forum. I'm just going to say that right now. It's not a forum, but if you have something that said, hey, this Yamaha piece does this really cool thing that I didn't do, I'd love to hear about that kind of thing. Okay. If you have any questions about the hardware or software capabilities of the MRX editor or the CIS line, including all the speakers and stuff, please send me an email and I'll look into it or explain it to you. For frontline things, when you're out on site, contact tech support for help first. Okay, that's your best bet on your first line of defense. I don't always get to emails immediately, so if you're out on site and you send me an email saying I can't do this, I might not get to you in time. So please call tech support. If it's over their head, they will get a hold of one of us specialists that will help with that kind of thing. So anyway, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to, give you whatever information. I love this Yamaha equipment. I wouldn't be working here and I wouldn't be preaching its wonderness if I didn't like it. I think it's some of the best commercial audio stuff out there. So, all right, that's pretty much what I got. So,
thanks, Jim. Yeah, hey, Jim, really appreciate it. Great job. The question that I've gotten, I'd be curious to see if you could maybe even pull up one of the DSPs in the UI again. I think a lot of our dealers are trying to do simple like bar, restaurant, retail locations with the DSPs, maybe the MRX3. Could you kind of show us how to just a simple solution where you're doing like a background music? Maybe you've got a Sonos or a streaming audio player coming into one of the inputs. Maybe you've got a paging microphone, and you want to make sure that there's no echo and feedback.
Okay.
I don't know if this is too much to ask, but could you show us how to do simple audio routing from an input to an output, and then one of those being a microphone input with the appropriate settings?
Sure. So what I've done, I've just opened up MTX MRX editor, and let's just do a new file. So we're going to start a new file, and then it's going to pull up my configuration wizard, and this is the coolest thing. So I'm going to say, let's just do an MTX3. MTX3 test. We're going to name the program. My screen is doing funny things here because my buttons aren't showing. Hang on. I have it zoomed in and my buttons aren't showing here.
Yeah, that's weird. You can barely see them at the bottom there.
Okay, let me go back to this. So I can always get to that wizard with this device configuration. So we're going to start over here. So MTX3, okay, and then I hit next. Okay, and I'm going to add one MTX3, and then I'm going to add YDIF. I have an XMV 4140 amplifier. And then so this is my two devices. It's going to ask what unit IDs I want to use. I'm going to use it. It comes up with the ones that are on the network. It shows the name of it. So I'm just going to use the default ones that are there. This kind of tells you how you need to kind of hook things up. These two are going to be connected by YDIF. I could change the order of them if I wanted to. And you basically want your signal to go from top down. So because my MTX3 is going to my XMV, I put the XMV below it. If I had an input device, I would put it up above. That just makes setting up the YDIF easier later. And then let's say I have one DCP panel, which is our little panels, and then I can hit finish, and I'll go in here and it'll do its thinking, and then this will tell you how everything should be connected up. So my DCP will go to my DCP port, my MTX3 and my XMV. This is how you'll wire your the YDIF ports, and this is how you will address your DCPs. Okay, so you can print that out. You could pull it into one of your drawings. Super cool, but it also tells you about the termination switch that's on the DCP. So there's lots of good information on there. And then we can close this, and the wizard is all done, and we can go in there. So let's do just a real quick setup. Let's do, this is going to be a paging mic.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a terrible typer. Okay. And then we're going to have music, left, and music right. Okay, so coming in on a stereo input, it's going to be music left and music right. If I go up here, this determines where my mic is going to be plugged into. So this is plugged into physical input number 1. Okay, if I go over here, my stereo is connected to stereo in left on that side and stereo in right on that side. Okay, so I would go to the back, I would plug my microphone into number 1, plug my CD player into music 1 and 2. Okay, so if I have a basic, say this is just a basic restaurant, and this is the dining room, and this is the restrooms, and this is the bar, and this is outside. Okay, that's my 4 output zones. So I can go in here, I can set my, it's a paging mic, so I'm going to set my high pass filter pretty, I'm not going to EQ the mic until I actually start talking into it. I can set my compressor to a level so that if they scream into it, it's not going to be super loud, but it still will be good. If my microphone's in the dining room and I have trouble with feedback, I can turn my feedback suppressors on and it'll help with that. That's sort of a last ditch effort to keep things from feeding back. This only works if the feedback happens and then it grabs it and tries to suppress it. So we want to try to keep feedback from not happening first and then engage this. Okay, so that's the settings on my inputs. Okay, I have my matrix here, and I want, for some reason, Yamaha, like, they come out of the box with everything assigned to everything, which is kind of, I always find kind of funny. It's kind of cool because you can plug things in and you'll get something out, but not necessarily something out where you want it. So that's, so I usually will clean that out. I want paging mic to go to, so zone 1, let's do this. Let's, zone 1 is also going to be my dining room and my bar. So the difference between zones and outputs is zones are kind of a processing block, and an output is an actual output to an amplifier. So if I have a dining room and I have 4 different types of speakers in my dining room, I want to put that on 4 different outputs so I can process each speaker type differently, but I still want them to be all on the same dining room zone. Okay, so that's the difference between zones and outputs. So bar, outside, and what did I have? Restroom. Okay, so now I can go back here to my matrix and I can say, okay, I want my paging to go to the bar, and I want it to go outside, and I want it to go to the restroom, but I don't necessarily want it to go to my dining room because I have a fancy restaurant, right? However, I do want my music to go to the dining room, and I want the music to go to the bar. I want my music to go outside, and I want my music to go to the restroom. Okay, so that's how I've set what goes to which zones. Okay, I go to the zone and I say, okay, I want my paging zone. I want my paging mic to duck my music. And so I can go in here and I can say, okay, channel 1 is going to duck the music, and it's going to duck at 30 dB, and it's going to hold it for a second. So when I do a page from that microphone, it's going to see that there's level on that microphone. It's going to duck the music. Okay, so that's the processing that goes on in the zone level of things. Then I go to my router and I say, okay, I want my dining room to go to the dining room. I want my bar. Oh, I want my bar to go to output 3, which is my bar. Okay. I want my outside to go to 4. Okay. And I want my restroom to go to 2. Now, I try to design it so I get straight lines here, but I deliberately change the order of my zones to the outputs to show you that you assign a zone to an output. Okay. Then I can go to my outputs and I can say, okay, here's my dining room output. My dining room has a Yamaha VXS. What should we put in there? How about a VSX 8? That's our nice 8-inch speaker, and that recalls the EQ for a VXS 8. Okay, so that's our factory EQ. Super great sounding boxes, so they don't have much EQ in them from our factory default, but it does clean them up a little bit. Super nice sounding thing. So that's on the output tab. You can then, as you're EQing your system, you can EQ it to taste. In here, you can give it a Bose smiley curve if you want. Sorry. There are also crossovers and other things that you can go do in the advanced if you need to get into that kind of thing. Effects, we're not going to worry about effects, but we can do that. I'm not going to worry about DCAs because that's kind of advanced controls. You can do pilot tone things and that kind of thing. But basically where we're at right now, we can go in here and we can assign our amplifiers. So YDIF out is going to input A, B, C, and D. So this is where you assign the YDIF channel from the MTX to the amplifier. So it kind of shows it graphically. So the output 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we had for our 4 outputs are now going to channels A, B, C, and D of our amplifier. And literally that will, now you can put music once you load that. So if I go online and I load that in, I should be able to start my CD player. And once it's done with its thinking, which it does a lot of, and it's airing out because of the time server thing. Okay, I can go in here. I could go in here. I could start my CD player. I'll see the level on the meter right here, and I should be able to bring that up. And as long as my zone, yeah, as long as my zone is up, I should be hearing music coming out of those 4 spots. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
And that's the wonder of the MTX3 and the MTX5 is it takes longer to label your channels than it does to actually get things assigned so you get audio coming through it.
Great. We've got a couple of questions here. Does the
can't hear you.
DCP port require a
Did
shielded cable?
Hang on. I think I messed something up.
Can you hear us? Check 1 2.
There we go.
Check 1 2. Okay, yeah, Scott, I'd like Jim to maybe address some of those questions. Got 10 questions there. Yeah, great presentation, guys. It's 10 o'clock straight up. We're going to keep rolling. I love that presentation, Scott. Thanks for asking that, because I might even edit that that work that you just did as a demonstration, if you will. So look for that from me as well. Let's continue with this questions, get that answered. Hey, really quick, you know, when you first brought that up and it had a predetermined path and you erased it out, is that something that you recommend, or is it kind of like, hey, try this out first, this might have already been routed correctly?
I would say no, because it basically routes every input to every output.
Okay, so it's just full on everything.
Yeah,
everything routed. Yeah, you want to clear that out.
Yeah, so
okay,
I recommend clearing it all out and then going through and saying, okay, I know I want microphone 1 to go here, 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 you know, and do it, you know, fairly systematically that way. That way, you know, it's going where you want it to go and not going where you don't want it to go.
Yeah, I've noticed with that in the past, sometimes you'll just turn it on and you'll get immediate feedback. And as soon as you turn the box on, it just screams at you. So it can be a little dangerous.
Yep. So
we do have a question here for the DCP cable. Does that require a shielded cable or just standard network cable?
Just standard Ethernet, Cat5e or better.
Okay. There's also a question, does it have the ability to adjust output volume levels using a sensing microphone to track the average ambient room noise level?
So yes. So in the zone, you can set it to, you can put a microphone out there and you can say, okay, look at channel 8. And then you set up this and it'll track the ambient noise level and turn it up and down as appropriate. And you have to do that for every zone. So you'll have to have a microphone in each of the zones that you want to do that in.
Okay, there's also a question about integration with control systems. I know you mentioned AMX and one other one, but I think the question is control system integration. I think from my standpoint is it's got RS-232 serial control. It's got network-based control, I would assume. Regarding what particular control systems would be up to that control system manufacturer and the drivers that they've written. And I will say that for our side, on Control 4 side, we are actively writing drivers today, and we should have those out released in the Q3 timeframe. So we're working on a potential release later in the future that adds some of those integrations to Control 4. So keep your eyes out for that.
Cool. One thing that I didn't mention is that there is also, it has a basic control of external devices that I can send commands. If you have a device that is network controllable, like a TV or something, I can send basic on-off commands to a TV from the MTX. So if I have a system that has an MTX in it and it's like a conference room and all it is just turning a TV on and off, I can do that send those controls to a button on my wall panel and do simple control that way. And it's super simple and super rudimentary. It's meant to be that way, but that is also another feature that's there.
Great. And then there's also the Provisionaire app control. I see a couple questions in there about iOS control for that.
Yep. So Provisionaire control and Provisionaire are you can make custom panels in there, and you can let's see if I can open one up here. I don't have one handy. Oh, here we go. This one may be really ugly because this is the one I've been experimenting on my desk, on my desktop. So this is a design that I'd done, and this one's super ugly because it uses just the basic things. But I can program things the way I want. I can have meters and level controls and buttons and stuff like that, and then I can send that to an iPad and control it from an iPad. You can do it in kiosk mode so that they can't actually make any changes to the layout or anything. They can only make changes to the buttons, change, the settings of the buttons and that kind of thing. It also has a program that you can do it in the computer. So you can run it from computer, and that also has a kiosk mode. So they can open up a kiosk file and on their computer and run it with their mouse. So yeah, Provisionaire control and Provisionaire touch are the two programs for doing that kind of thing. Super easy to design to. Basically, you literally drag from MTX editor into the Provisionaire control to do your design. So there's a bunch of templates there. You can just drop your controls onto their templates. It's super easy to use, super reliable, really. I've never had it not go online when I've opened it up. iOS is kind of famous for screwing things like that up, and it works really well.
Great. There's also a couple questions here around building and importing speaker profiles from other vendors for the EQ settings.
So yes. So if you go to the output and you go to the speaker processor, and you can go in and you can, I'll just super mess this up here. Say you have a really crazy looking thing here. Okay. I can go in there and I can store this, and I can say, Fred speaker 1, and I can save that. And then next time I can go to the list and I can recall Fred speaker 1. Okay. I have a few in here. I have like a generic, a generic subwoofer. I can go back to a Fred speaker 1, which is that wacky thing that I just made. So you can do that. You basically, you can put your settings in there, or you can, the settings from your manufacturer. Every DSP does processing a little bit different. So moving numbers to numbers might not be perfectly accurate. But if you set up smart and whatever and smart out your speaker ahead of time in your shop, and then you can save it as a preset. If that's a speaker that you always use, set it up in your shop, get a baseline, save it as a preset, and then you can use that going forward.
Is there a place to see the DSP utilization of the processor?
There is. In the MTX5, you can do that. The MRX or the MRX5 and the MRX3, because they're fixed, you can't, because it's fixed. In the MTX7, let's do this. System number 2. I'm going to add one of these. And then I'll show you where that is in the menu here. Okay, so I can go in here and I can go up here into tools and I can say compile, and it'll give me compile successful. Of course, I don't have anything in there, but it gives me 14% processing. So that's just overhead, gives me memory, gives me latency, gives me the whole thing. I can even go into more detail if I want. It tells you if you're over on one of these, it tells you what you can fix to get it underneath 100%. Unlike some manufacturers, you can run the MRX7 all the way up to 100%. As long as it compiles, it'll run. There are a few DSPs out there that when you get over 80%, it gets really hairy and really wacky. Yamaha's not that way. 100% means 100% for us. So.
Great. I think that covers most of the questions.
Okay.
So thanks so much for the demos. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
And for anyone who may be on who doesn't have a current account with Snap or Volutone or MRI or any of our pro stores, go to snapav.com. From there, you should be able to find the links for that at the top. There's a become a partner link that you can check out, become a SnapAV e-commerce partner. And then you can also obviously go to all the Snap Pro stores through the SnapAV website, Volutone, MRI, Custom Plus, AllNet, and many more. We now have, I believe, 27 Snap Pro stores online, and it's growing every day. I can't even keep up with it myself. So continue to check us out on our website. Go to the Yamaha brand page on the Snap e-commerce platform under the brands dropdown, and you can learn a ton more there as well. Feel free to reach out to us. You can also reach our commercial sales team at commercialsales@snapav.com if you have any questions about any of this, and you can use that email address to get you routed to the right person, whether it's Volutone or MRI or AllNet, any of those places. Again, that's commercialsales@snapav.com. And with that, thanks so much, Jim. Gary, why don't you take us home?
Yep.
Yeah, truly here to help you guys. And you're right, it's expanding every day. The SnapAV locals are becoming this living, breathing monster. 27 locations already. But no, we're all experts. And Jim, feel comforted in knowing that you guys have trained us. Yamaha has trained us as well. We got a lot of experience in this realm particularly. I just love the fact that we're kind of marrying Scott's vision and the Snap commercial line into our weekly discussion, and that's primarily why we're doing this. So yeah, I recorded all this, guys. Thank you so much. I will cut up some of that video so it's you can go directly to that presentation that you did. And you know what, guys, can I have you back in 4 hours? What do you say? Come on,
yeah,
give me a little time off to do some emails, but I'm going to have you back here in 4 hours. That's 2 p.m. West Coast. That's 5 p.m. for our tailgate twilight session, but that's tonight in four more hours. So, hey, if you had to dump off, get your team members back on here. Go ahead and re-register if you'd like, but we will be back here having the same discussion, same basic training, but please pass it on to your team members. Jim, great job. Yes, I will make sure that the email goes out on Friday with all of what we discussed, links, and I'll continue to have the conversation with our dealers. They can hit me back off that email, and I'll make sure that you're in the loop to continue in this next week. I really wanted to talk job specifics. Things are opening up. Yeah, we did get a couple of asks about Yamaha current inventory, and I always say, hey, we all know what we're going through right now. Everybody is privy to our online inventory as well as the Snap e-commerce. So it's just something that we've all got to kind of keep updating ourselves on each and every week. But hey, POs get dropped on our stores, every week. So there's always something to look forward to. Our main concern is that logistically we're setting your jobs up so that you can go and get ready for your install. But great discussion here. And you know what I always say about the digital portion of we have to rely on the digital templates, so to speak, that Yamaha has implemented, things like compression, things like, because out of the box, it's going to sound pretty damn good. And I know that I have all Yamaha equipment in here. So I love having that digital discussion, and that we all have to kind of just trust this thing that we come out of the box, we operate it, and it's not a horror story where it's going to continue to feedback right away. But you're right. Plug in a CD player, and more times than not, it's going to be routed correctly. We're going to figure out that routing, and we're going to make a customer very, very happy. Things are opening up for sure. So time is right. All right, guys. Scott Norman, thank you so much. I'll see you in a few hours, buddy. Jim Johnson, thank you. You're going to be back here as well.
Yep.
Let's continue the conversation. I have it recorded. Look for my in your inbox on Friday. The weekly webinar series continues. Next week, we have Sony projectors coming on board. Look forward to that. Scott, you and I have more commercial training to implement and plan for. Guys, it's going to be busy out there. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Be safe. Thank you so much for our weekly webinar series from all the SnapAV locals. That's AllNet, MRI, Custom Plus, and Volutone. We'll see you guys in a few hours. Thanks, gentlemen.